One significant difference between tokens and cookies is how the browser automatically stores and manages a cookie. Once a website sets a cookie, the browser will automatically store that cookie and then send that cookie along with every request to that website. Since we are only holding the token in the memory of our JavaScript application, we're going to lose that token if the user does a refresh on the page. That effectively reboots the application. That's probably not the behavior that we want because it doesn't mimic the behavior of a traditional web application using cookies. I can log into a website, it sets a cookie, I can refresh that website as many times as I want, and the browser still has that cookie. It's going to send it along on every request so that I am authenticated. The same just isn't true when we're using tokens. You need to use JavaScript to store that token and put that token into every request. But fortunately, there is an easy solution to this problem. We just have to write a little more code to store this token in HTML5 local storage or session storage. Let's see how to do that next. In the application, I am a logged in user who has an access token and can see the secret recipe. But if I refresh this page, I lose my token and I need to log in again. Whereas with cookies, even a session cookie would have still been around for the browser to send to keep me authenticated. And the reason I'm losing that token is because it is stored in memory and inside this application, and when I refresh the browser, that restarts the Angular application. So what I need to do is find a place to store this token, and I have placed another service into this project. It's called local storage, and it's a very simple wrapper around local storage in the browser. I can get access to local storage through the Windows service. Local storage is a simple key value store, and I've given this service the ability to add, retrieve, and remove keys and values from local storage. There's a lot of other fancier things that you could do with a local storage service like this. You could, for example, fall back to using cookies if local storage isn't available on the browser. And you can find some third parties that have already written services for Angular that you can plug in that use local storage and session storage that way. What's important to me is just that I can take and inject this local storage service into my current user service where the token is stored. And now when anyone sets the profile for the user, I'm just going to take that entire profile and store it into local storage. That way I can get the access token and the username back when this service initializes. So first I'll need some sort of key value to store the profile. Let's define user key as just some arbitrary string value. Just need that to be consistent. I'll call it uToken. And when anyone sets the profile for the user, I can say, dear local storage, please add this key and serialize this object into local storage, the profile. And now when the service starts up, I can just add some additional logic here so that we can retrieve the profile if it already exists in local storage. So I think what I will do is instead of assigning the profile here, I'll say profile is the result of invoking some initialize function, which I can write here. So initialize is a function that will still place some defaults here for the user. So we'll say user equals this object that has username token and get logged in. But then we'll also try to retrieve that user from local storage. So go to local storage, do a get on that user key that I'm using. And if that local user exists, what I'll do is copy the username and the token from local user. So local user.username and user.token is local user.token. And now we can just return user. So if a user was in local storage, that will now be part of the profile that is exposed throughout the application and gives everyone access to a persistent username, a persistent token. Let's save all the files and try this out. I'll do a hard refresh on the application. Go to see our recipe, log in. I can see the recipe. Let me try another hard refresh. I can still see the recipe because if I look in the resources of the Chrome Developer Tools, I can see the username and access token are stored there. And now that I'm using local storage, there's probably some additional features that I'd want to put into the application. For instance, a sign out button, and that sign out button would have to purge that token from local storage. And because the user might close their laptop and come back to this application a couple days later, we might want to test when we retrieve that token if it's still valid, because tokens generally expire, and some access tokens can have a very short life, 20 minutes or less. So when we retrieve that token, we might want to hit a protected endpoint just to see if it's still valid, and if it's not, remove it from local storage. Those are the types of scenarios that I'd like to leave for you, the viewer, as an exercise.